Dylan Redwine was only 13 years old when he learned a secret about his father that would cost him his life. Let's get into it. Dylan's parents, Elaine Hatfield and Mark Redwine, had a nasty divorce after 18 years of marriage and was going through a custody battle for Dylan. Elaine moved from Durango, Colorado with Dylan and his older brother Corey, who was 7 years older, to Colorado Springs. In September 2012, Elaine was granted full custody of Dylan. However, it was court appointed that Dylan would spend Thanksgiving with Mark in Durango, Colorado. Dylan didn't seem to have a great relationship with Mark after the divorce. He was upset and uncomfortable with him and was not looking forward to visiting him for Thanksgiving. He begged his mom to let him stay home, but this was a court-ordered trip, and unfortunately, after Elaine spoke with her lawyer, he had to go or she would be held in contempt of court. Elaine dropped Dylan off at the airport on November 18, 2012, not knowing that it would be the last time that she would get to hug him. Dylan arrives in Dakota at 5:46 p.m., and after Mark picks him up from the airport, they go to Walmart and then to McDonald's. Mark claimed he wanted to have a sit-down dinner, but Dylan just wanted to go through a drive-thru. Dylan receives a text from his mom around 7 p.m. asking if he arrived. He replies that he did with a frowny face. Dylan had planned to spend the night with one of his friends, but he had to text his friend back to let him know that Mark said he could not stay. So they made plans for Dylan to come at 6:30 a.m. the next morning. Dylan was clearly not wanting to be around Mark, and you are not going to believe the reason why. Around 7:30 a.m. the next morning, Mark needed to run some errands, so he claimed that he tried to wake Dylan to go with him, but Dylan wanted to stay in bed instead. Mark went to his payroll office for his work, and then after he handled things there, he went to his attorney's office. While gone, he texted Dylan 4 times, first at 8:14 a.m., and it said, "Hey bud, out at the office, call me." Again at 8:15 a.m. saying, "Call me please." When he texted him again at 11:23 a.m., he said, "Dylan, I'm home and you're nowhere to be found. Come home so I can take you to Bayfield. At least call me." Mark sent the final message at 2:33 p.m. and it said, "Dylan, you need to call me. Where are you?" All these messages went unanswered. Mark also called Dylan 7 times. When he returned home, he said that Dylan and all his belongings were gone. Well, he decides to take a nap until around 2:30 p.m. Mark said that he didn't worry because he thought Dylan had gone to his friend's house or was out maybe fishing. Now, keep in mind that one of his friend's house was 6 miles away, and the other friend was 20 miles away. So, how did Dylan get to his friends? And is there not any concern as to why he is not responding to his phone, especially since you came home and all his belongings were gone? Mark woke up from his nap and finally began looking for Dylan. First, he went to Dylan's friend Tristan's house. Tristan hadn't seen him. He then goes to Nendo's house, and Dylan's friend Ron was also there. And they both said that they had not seen Dylan, but they had been trying to get in touch with Dylan all day, and he had not been responding to his phone. Ron was the friend that Dylan was supposed to spend the night with. He and Dylan had been friends since they were little and stayed in contact after Dylan moved away. Ryan had even set an alarm so that he could get up because Dylan had planned to be at his house at 6:30 that morning, but Dylan never showed. After Mark left, Ron texted Dylan's phone and told him that Mark was looking for him. Mark texted Elaine around 4:30 p.m. asking if she had heard from Dylan and that he had been trying to reach him all day with no luck. Now, Elaine is worried because she is 600 miles away, and Dylan would have called her if he was mad and maybe just had left. Elaine immediately contacts the sheriff's office while her, Corey, and her current husband make plans to take the 600-mile drive to Durango. By 5:30 p.m., they were on the road. Mark had told Elaine that he had reported Dylan missing, but when she called the marshal's office, she learned that they had not heard of Dylan and that Mark had not called to make a report. Elaine is extremely worried. Before the divorce, Mark told her that things would get nasty. They were married for 18 years. She was aware of his temper. She just couldn't believe that Dylan had ran away and not called or texted her. The La Plata County Search and Rescue and Sheriff's Office immediately began the search, focusing on the areas around Mark's house. When the deputies arrived at Mark's house, he was drunk. They attempted to get something of Dylan so that the K-9 could retrieve his scent, but Mark said that there was nothing of Dylan's in his home. Knowing that Dylan had just spent the night, they were confused as to why he didn't have any of Dylan's belongings. Mark let the K-9 sniff a pillow that Dylan used, but the K-9 was not able to pick up Dylan's scent. The search coordinator takes notes of Mark's behavior because he didn't come out of the house to help with the search, and as it got late in the night, he turns all the lights off in the house as if he went to bed. Elaine and the rest of the family finally arrived in Durango at 2:30 a.m. on November 20. When they got to the marshal's office, Elaine learns that Mark did contact them to report Dylan missing, but it was not at the time he had told her. Instead, it was 2 hours later. Daylight breaks and the search team gathers again at 7 a.m. and this time they were joined by Elaine, her new husband, and her son Corey. Dylan's stepbrother Brandon and his wife and children were on the way to Durango to help find Dylan. Mark was on his porch watching and drinking coffee. Brandon was Mark's son from his first marriage. Elaine is his second marriage. Elaine and Corey immediately felt that Mark knew more than he was portraying. Not only was his behavior odd, but the story he told the investigators just didn't add up. Dylan wasn't a big fan of fishing, and he wouldn't go alone because he didn't even know how to tie up his own lure. Mark also claimed that when he came back from running errands that the TV was on Nickelodeon. Dylan didn't watch Nickelodeon. He was a big fan of MTV. There were also in question as to why Dylan took all his belongings if he was just going fishing or to a friend's house, and why Dylan was not responding to his phone. However, Mark refused to communicate with them. Mark told investigators when they first interviewed him that he believed that Elaine was involved and that Dylan ran away because he had problems at home. They both took a lie detector test. Of course, Elaine passed, but Mark failed, especially when he was asked, "Do you know where Dylan is?" A statement was made by the sheriff's office that Dylan was considered missing and not a runaway as Mark had claimed. Not only was Elaine and Corey suspicious of Mark, Brandon, his other son, had also grown suspicious of him, as well as the search teams, the investigators, and the community. The search for Dylan continued. Special FBI agent John Greasing was brought in to help find Dylan. For their second interview, he met Mark at his house to find him drunk and holding the pillow that's supposed to have had Dylan's scent on it. Elaine was able to provide the search team with a hat and a t-shirt of Dylan's that she brought with her for the dogs to pick up his scent. The snow came in and slowed down all efforts in finding Dylan. A vigil was held for Dylan on November 27, 2012. Mark finally makes an appearance, but he was speaking about Dylan in the past tense, which was noticed by many, including Elaine and the rest of the family. Investigators obtained a search warrant for Mark's house. Cadaver dogs picked up the scent of human remains from the living room and the back of Mark's pickup truck. Blood was found in the living room, on the floor, the sofa, the love seat, the floor in front of the love seat, the coffee table, and underneath an area rug. Mark claimed, now listen to this. Mark claimed that the blood was from when he and Dylan were passing the football after they got back from Walmart. And Dylan got hit in the lip. But it was a Nerf football. And the amount of blood that was found was too much for a busted lip. Search for Dylan came to an halt due to the weather. Elaine was still not receiving any communication from Mark. He refused to answer her calls. He had blocked her. He was just definitely not trying to talk with her at all. Dylan's friends and their family joined Elaine, Corey, and her husband in gatherings outside of Mark's house, holding signs while chanting, "Where is Dylan?" Corey even went on TV and said that he believes Mark had something to do with Dylan's disappearance and that he knew where Dylan was. But Mark continued to act as if he wasn't involved and just wanted Dylan to come home. 3 months have passed and Dylan still had not been found. But Elaine did not give up on finding Dylan. In February 2013, Elaine, Mark, and Corey appeared on the Dr. Phil show. Elaine and Corey decided to take Dylan's disappearance nationally, hoping to get some answers from Mark. But Mark continued to deny that he knew anything about where Dylan was and even accused Elaine being responsible for his disappearance.
I think either he was taken by somebody that knew who he was going with, or he was abducted as he was walking down the street trying to make it to his friend Tristan's house. I personally have a lot of suspicions that Elaine could be involved in this, but I don't have anything to back that up, and I don't have anything to support that.
Do you honestly believe that from 6 hours away, that she put him on an airplane and flew him to you, and then somehow or another trailed behind and abducted him from your couch? Is that your theory?
Well, I don't believe that she did it alone. I believe that it's possible that she had helped do that.
Okay, so you actually think that she and a team trailed behind him, and do you think she would have taken him against his will? Or do you think he cooperated in this?
Well, those are questions that I can't answer because I don't know. I don't know what happened here.
But what is your theory? You say you think she may be involved.
I suspect that she may be involved. I believe that there are people in the community that we lived in for many years that she knows very well that are very likely to maybe help her in this.
So these are criminal types?
Well, she's not been known to hang around the professional people that in the industry that she works in.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
She very much
so you think
hangs around the criminal types.
Okay, so you think she may have some criminal types that helped her abduct him against his will? I just want to know your theory.
Well, I don't know the people that she knows very closely. It doesn't matter what I think because I have no way of being able to prove it, and it's only speculative that I even feel that way.
But do you really honestly believe that, or is that just something you're saying? I mean, do you honestly in your heart of hearts believe that this woman is involved in the disappearance of your son?
I believe that it's possible. Yes.
You need to bring him home. And please, I hope you didn't hurt him. I hope you did not hurt him. Because I really don't trust you, and I really have a concern that you hurt him, and his bones are out there just laying, and you don't even care. You don't. Where's your emotion? Where is any of your feelings?
What is it? What emotion is it you're trying to get out of me?
I want you to do something to find Dylan.
Karen, Mark's ex-girlfriend, had a nerve to step in on the Dr. Phil show to defend Mark and quickly got put in her place. Plus, her opinion does not even matter.
I dated Mark for about 6 months. I spent time with him and Dylan, and I don't see him in any kind of light other than a good dad. I do not believe Mark would harm Dylan in any way. He loved Dylan. I do not believe Mark is involved at all in the disappearance of Dylan. I believe Mark hasn't got a fair shake in the media. I'm a straight shooter and I'll tell it like it is. And what I would say to Elaine is, how dare you point the fingers at somebody when you have no proof?
So you're not in a relationship with him now?
No.
but you were in the past, and you've observed him with Dylan,
Yes, I did.
and you say they had a good relationship.
Yes, I traveled to Mark's home, spent a week with him and Dylan, and everything that he said is exactly what happened. Dylan slept on the couch. He would never get up. You know, he would walk around. He'd get up in the morning, Mark would, and smoke a cigarette and have a cup of coffee, and he'd be like, Dylan, Dilly boy, let's go, get up, get up. And we'd do this for like hour and a half, 2 hours. He just wouldn't get up. And the same thing is like his work. He would have to go into town to do his payroll or drop off papers because he travels. So that's why he's not home to be with his kids. I mean, he travels, he works out of town. When he comes home, he would get Dylan, but I don't believe for a minute he killed his kid or...
Okay, and I understand that, and I appreciate you weighing in with some independent observations.
Right.
The one thing I have a problem with is one statement you made, which is to look at her and say, how dare you?
Right.
Because, lady, you don't have the right to speak to a mother with a missing child with that kind of judgment, and you don't know what she's going through
Correct.
right now.
I give you
And so
that.
don't put yourself in her shoes.
I give
You
you
don't
that.
have the right to say that.
That's fine.
You're,
I'll give
you're
you
out of
that.
your lane when you go telling her, how dare you make that comment. I'm just saying.
Mark was offered to take a lie detector test on the Dr. Phil show to prove his innocence. But of course, we already know how that was going to go.
Okay, is addressing my concerns and the things that are bothering me and have been for a long time.
Well, as I said, it's got to be voluntary or we don't do it.
It's hard for me to digest all this. This is all happening way too quickly. I just feel so overwhelmed.
Would you be more comfortable with me coming out to the studio tomorrow morning after a good night's sleep?
I'll be honest with you, I feel like my blood is boiling and it has been for hours. But my point is, I'm not refusing to take a polygraph test. All I'm asking for is, you know, some time to process this whole thing, because I mean, this has all got blindsided me. After talking with Jack, I felt more comfortable taking the test tomorrow instead of doing it today.
So yesterday, Mark was agitated and needed time to rest and process things. He said he wasn't opposed to taking the test, he just didn't want to feel pressured. I want him to be totally comfortable. This is about getting real answers. So despite waiting, I invited Mark to come here to Paramount to meet Jack Tremarco for an 8 a.m. polygraph test.
It's my understanding that Mark's here now. I'm set up. I'm just about ready for him. So if he's going to take this test, we'll just get it done.
Well, I'm here at the Dr. Phil offices and I'm gonna take the test. I'm not saying that I'm necessarily ready to take the test, but you know, at this point, you know, we're gonna take it. We're gonna do what we gotta do.
How are you? You've had a lot of time to think since we last met.
The bottom line is I'm trying to be forthright with everybody. It's very intimidating to have my ex-wife sitting on a stage with me pointing fingers at me. I mean, that bothers me. And then to have my son come out and say, I hate you, you know, just, I feel like I'm being pushed off the edge of the cliff.
Well, what are we going to do?
You know, I didn't come here to waste anybody's time, so let's do it.
I'll ask the camera to give us some privacy, and we should be done in about an hour and a half.
A question was asked, and I gave an honest answer to it. The question was, do you feel well enough to take this test? And my response to that question was no. It became clear that by answering no to that question, that there was no point in proceeding any farther.
Mark decided that he didn't feel well enough to take the polygraph test. He told me he had about 3 hours of sleep last night, and he had a half bottle of Jim Beam on top of things. So he doesn't feel well enough to take the test.
June 27, 2013, during a 4-day search on Middle Mountain Road, located 8 miles from Mark's home, about 12 miles up the mountain, a Nike Air Jordan shoe was found and later discovered to be the same shoe that Dylan was wearing when Mark picked him up at the airport. 2 days later, a cadaver dog finds 2 human bones and more were found in the same area along with the t-shirt Dylan was wearing. They also found earbuds, socks, and underwear. Elaine provided one of Dylan's baby teeth to confirm that the bones were Dylan's. When Mark was notified that some of Dylan's bones were located, he responded by saying only finding 2% of Dylan's remains did not mean that he was found. He stated to his son Brandon that the rest of Dylan's body, including the skull, would have to be found before investigators could determine if blunt force trauma was the cause of death. Huh? Who said anything about blunt force trauma? So you saying that you hit him in the head? The more Mark talked, the more he made himself look guilty. Like, is that the only thing that you could say and your son has been missing for almost a year? What about, okay, we are getting closer to at least knowing something? Mark had begun telling the story that he believed that Dylan was attacked by a bear. Bears begin to hibernate in September to mid-October, or I could be wrong. His defense team also used this as their defense at his trial. A search warrant was conducted at Mark's house again in August of 2013. And this time the cadaver dog picked up Sid around the garbage and again inside the home, especially on the floor, the washing machine, and on Mark's clothes he had on the night Dylan went missing. 2 more years has passed. Dylan has been missing now for 3 years. There was still not enough evidence to hold Mark accountable, but he was named a person of interest in Dylan's death. November the 1st, 2015, Dylan's skull was found by some hikers further up Middle Mountain Road, about a mile from his other remains. An autopsy was performed on the skull, and 2 marks were found caused by a knife or sharp tool, and a fracture was found above his left eye due to blunt force trauma. Dylan's death changed from undetermined to homicide. A new district attorney was elected in 2017 and felt that things were moving slowly and pushed forward with convening a grand jury. They returned the indictment of Mark for second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in death. Mark was finally arrested in July of 2017 in Bellingham, Washington. Police went to C.R. England Trucking, West Valley City, Utah, with a search warrant to seize items collected out of Redwine's truck at the time of his arrest. He was extradited back to Colorado to face trial. Why did Mark kill his son Dylan? Father's Day 2011, Mark took Dylan and Corey on a road trip to Michigan to watch a baseball game. While at the hotel, Dylan was playing on Mark's laptop while he was napping. Dylan came across some disgusting and disturbing photos of Mark. After alerting Corey, they went in the bathroom and Corey took pictures with his phone and told Dylan not to tell anyone about the photos. They didn't let Mark know that they saw them either. The photos were of Mark wearing women's lingerie and makeup, and one photo showed Mark wearing a diaper and then later eating his own feces from the diaper after he smeared it all over his face and beard. Yuck. Believe it or not, those pictures are all over the internet if you want to see them. They are pretty disgusting. But you can probably Google Mark Redwine and they will probably definitely come up. Dylan lost all respect for Mark and it ruined Dylan's relationship and image of his father. Mark and Dylan took another trip in August 2011. Corey was not required to go because he was an adult. Mark and Corey had fallen out while Dylan and Mark were on this trip. So Corey sent copies of the photos to Mark to confront him. Corey called his father, an explicit, that's all I'm going to say, eating coward, and said you are what you eat. Mark was heated to find out that Corey and Dylan had seen the pictures, and he got very upset. He called Corey a thief and accused him of trying to hurt him like his mother. At the time of this trip, Mark and Elaine were in a custody battle over Dylan. A year later, August 2012, Dylan and Mark were on another trip to Boston. Mark began complaining to Dylan that his mom and Corey were bad role models and influences for him. Dylan was upset about Mark's comments and attempted to call and text Corey multiple times asking for the poop photos. Dylan wanted to show Mark who really was a bad influence, but Corey didn't send the pictures because he didn't want to add to the dispute. Elaine was not aware of the pictures until after Dylan's disappearance. When Mark was confronted, he claimed that the pictures were photoshopped and planted in his home by Elaine and Corey. He never admitted otherwise to the pictures. It is believed that when Dylan was visiting in November for Thanksgiving, Mark and Dylan had a falling out. Dylan confronted him about the photos, and Mark got angry, killed his son in a fit of rage. Trial was rescheduled 10 times, once due to Mark's lawyer being arrested for domestic violence in September of 2019. Another time it was delayed so a judge could rule on numerous pretrial motions. And when COVID hit, it was delayed for several reasons. Finally, trial begins on June 21st, 2021 and lasted for 5 weeks. Of course, Mark pleads not guilty. The prosecution team was represented by Kristen Champagne and Fred Johnson. Mark was represented by public defenders John Morona and Justin Bogan. After 6 hours, the jury returned a verdict and found Mark guilty of second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in death. Mark showed no emotion during the entire trial and had nothing to say after hearing the verdict. October 8, 2021, Mark was sentenced to 48 years in prison by Jerry Wilson, the 6th Judicial Court judge, after he stated the following: "As a father, it is your obligation to protect your son and keep him from harm. And instead of that, you inflicted enough injury on him to kill him in your living room. After the passion or whatever caused you to act the way you did subside, you didn't think about Dylan, you thought about yourself. You sanitized the crime scene, you hid Dylan's body, and you went so far as to remove the head from the rest of his body." He further chastised Redwine for showing no emotion in court. After all this time and listening to what was heard in this courtroom, you still take absolutely no responsibility for what you did to Dylan, Wilson said. "I have trouble remembering a convicted criminal defendant that has shown such an utter lack of remorse for his criminal behavior." Impact statements were given by Elaine, Corey, and Brandon. Mark is currently serving his time at the Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility in Ordway, Colorado. Of course, he has appealed his case. In a pre-sentencing document, Mark wrote the following to the judge: "Innocent of all charges and miscarriage of justice and fake convention and sham trial." He went on to say, according to Wilson, that he was exercising his right to appeal the jury's biased decision to convict despite no evidence that any crime was committed, and he too lost a child he loved more than life itself. He wrote he would continue to fight for justice for Dylan and stand against fake justice. Really? He's an idiot. A narcissist. That's exactly what he is. After almost a decade, justice was finally served for Dylan. Comment on your thoughts about this case. Please remember to be kind and respect the opinions of others. See you next time.